Dear viewers, the topic which we will discuss today is why Sri Lanka is at the brink of disaster? Question mark. July 9th, that is Saturday, has been a very tragic day for Sri Lanka because of two reasons. The first is that the demonstrators in Colombo, they attacked and occupied the president's house. They burned they burned the residence, the private residence of Prime Minister. Now, these two things are very dangerous. Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranil, he has been trying his level best to manage acute crisis which Sri Lanka is facing, acute shortage of food, fuel and medicines. And this crisis has been going on since April, to the extent that the Prime Minister had to resign. The Rajapaksa family is being held responsible, is squarely being held responsible for the disaster. Corruption, nepotism, bad governance. So these are the things which have been happening in Sri Lanka, particularly in the recent past. But July 9th is a very sad day for Sri Lanka because thousands and thousands of demonstrators, as I said earlier, attacked and occupied President's house. They not only attacked, they also led to a situation in which the swimming pool of the president's house was basically taken over by the demonstrators. They roamed freely as far as the premises of the president's house is concerned. The Prime Minister's private residence in Colombo was also attacked and burned. Now, the thing is basically that since April, Sri Lanka is facing a mega crisis. And a country which has almost 100% literacy. And Sri Lanka passed through a process of development after the civil war ended in 2009 when Liberation Tamil Tigers Elam was defeated by the state of Sri Lanka. But then what has happened is that in the last 10 years, the monopoly over power by the Rajapaksa family created a very ugly situation for the people of Sri Lanka. First was the economic crisis. Of course, the pandemic played a very pivotal role. The dropout as far as the tourism or the erosion of tourism, foreign tourists, their numbers declined. The third thing which has happened recently, that there are 2 million Sri Lankan expatriates, and they have been sending around $600 to $800 million a month. But these days there has been a drop as far as the remittance is concerned. So the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranil, had to appeal to 2 million Sri Lankan expatriates that they should send money through the regular banking channel, so that the government of Sri Lanka, which is facing shortage of foreign currency in the dollars, is able to cope with the situation. Now, something is going on in Colombo these days. Talks with the IMF, with the World Bank and multilateral agencies to bail out Sri Lanka from this deep crisis. But so far there has not been any headway. The Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranil, has said that the year 2022 and the year 2023 will be very difficult. And there will be some relief for the people, 22 million people of Sri Lanka, in 2024. Now, this is very dangerous. For how long the people of Sri Lanka can live without the adequate supply of power, fuel? The food prices have escalated. The inflation rate has gone up to 54%. This is terrible. And the government is saying that around 40,000 tons of diesel, shipment of diesel is due, petrol is due, but that is, it is not, able to make any difference. India helped Sri Lanka for some sort of a bailout package, but then there is a conference which is being planned for managing economic crisis in Sri Lanka, a conference in which China, India, Japan, United States and European Union may be included. And they will basically try to figure out how to deal with the pathetic situation in Sri Lanka. A country which got independence in 1948, which passed through a process, but then which was a role model for South Asia in terms of its very high literacy ratio, in terms of its tourist industry, and also the rule of law, which particularly in the city of Colombo was quite visible. Now, what lessons Pakistan can learn from Sri Lanka? This is very important because of the fact that since the regime change on April 11 this year, the new government which has come into power has increased the prices of petrol and diesel enormously. Likewise, the prices of essential commodities like medicines and food and other things, essential items, have also gone up. And the government of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is saying that, well, it's a very difficult situation these days, and it will take a year for Pakistan to get over this economic crisis. But he has taken the pride that because of difficult measures which the government has taken, like it has increased the prices of gas, electricity, and that has petroleum products. In the budget, in the federal budget, which was passed recently, heavy taxes have been imposed. So the purpose basically that it should not permit Pakistan to become Sri Lanka, which defaulted. And they have taken the credit that Pakistan has escaped the default. It has been a narrow escape. So can Pakistan deal with its economic predicament? What lessons it can learn from Sri Lanka? I think the foremost lesson primarily that economy is the key. Economy must be managed properly. And the mistake, the blunder which was committed by the Rajapaksa family, when both the president and the prime minister belong to the same family, the finance minister, that they totally disregarded the fact that economic management was essential, was vital. Despite the pandemic, despite other issues, but they should have at least redeemed the consequences, but they were not very serious. So the government of Pakistan must be serious and must make sure that corruption and nepotism and the misuse of authority, misuse of resources should not be allowed. People are surprised that a country like Sri Lanka, an island in paradise, which basically had motivated a lot of people. I mean that I have been to Sri Lanka at least 12 times, and I have seen the transformation of Sri Lanka when there was the civil war and the situation, law and order situation, was very tense. But then after 2009, things changed, things got better, and a lot of tourism and but then of course what has happened is basically that absence of long-term planning And I'm surprised that Sri Lanka gets a lot of rainfall, it has water reservoirs. Then why its hydel, power generation has not been able to help out the energy crisis? So these are the things which we have to understand, that Pakistan, if the leadership is honest, if the leadership is competent and efficient and visionary, then certainly it can make sure that Pakistan will become an economic hub. Pakistan and of course with the China-Pakistan economic corridor and things like that. But it has not happened. The foreign reserves of Pakistan have dwindled to less than $10 billion. But the case of Sri Lanka is hopeless, because I think their foreign reserves are less than $1 billion. So therefore, I would like to conclude by saying that what has happened in Colombo on July 9th is a very poor reflection as far as the frustration is concerned. The people of Sri Lanka are frustrated with months and months of agony and hardships which they are encountering, which they are facing in terms of the shortage of food and fuel and medicines. And curfew was imposed the night of July 8th, which was withdrawn as the lawyers and the political parties, they opposed, and they said that the decision was wrong. So curfew has been lifted, but then schools and colleges and universities have been closed because the students cannot reach their destinations, the education institutions, the shortage of fuel. Public transport is not functioning properly. So these are the things when a crisis takes place, that Sri Lanka was unable to formulate a crisis management mechanism at the governmental level, at the non-governmental level, knowing even a year before that the crisis was occurring in Sri Lanka, was taking place in Sri Lanka, economic crisis, serious energy crisis and food crisis. So why there was no crisis management mechanism in Sri Lanka? Although Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka, you have so many think tanks and policy-oriented research centers. They could have planned it. They could have done something about it. But the problem is basically, and then I would finish, that even if think tanks and universities and other avenues, if they make an effort, then the government failed to deliver. So the Rajapaksa family, the protesters are demanding that the President Rajapaksa must resign. And it is not only the question of resignation. The thing is basically that there has to be a national government, national unity government in Sri Lanka, which should control the situation. We should take the expatriates of Sri Lanka into confidence that they should send their remittances, proper remittances to help out their country. But of course, it means that the elites of Sri Lanka are not. They don't have the ownership, and they have let the people of their country down. Thank you very much.